this is where he's coming from. This is his fundamental assertion, is that you have to have libertarian freedom on man's part. But God cannot have libertarian freedom. He's given it up voluntarily, but he cannot have libertarian freedom in...
God can't have libertarian freedom? Is that what I'm saying? Of course. I've heard Calvinists argue that God doesn't have libertarian freedom, but I'm certainly not arguing that God doesn't have libertarian freedom. I believe that God, like A.W. Tozer argues, God decreed not which choice man would make, but that man would have a free choice, and that a God less than sovereign wouldn't be willing to grant his creatures that amount of freedom. He wouldn't be able to handle it.
In creating a world that glorifies him in the way that he chooses to be glorified. He cannot work all things after the counsel of his will. That has to be limited.
No, he can work all things out of the counsel of his will. He's working things that we do freely according to the counsel of his will. There's a big difference between positively, actively, in time, working out things for good versus determining everything everybody does. Big difference between those two. And I love to use John MacArthur's words from whenever he was younger. He's become more and more Calvinistic over the years. But this is an article he wrote years and years ago that I love to use because it's it perfectly, succinctly describes what we believe with regard to like Romans 8:28, for example. But God's role with regard to evil is never as its author. God simply permits evil agents to work and then overrules evil for his own wise and holy ends. Amen. Agree with you there, MacArthur. Ultimately, God is able to make all things, including all the fruits of all the evil of all time, work together for a greater good. In other words, he is able to bring good from evil. It's called redemption. You take a bad thing that an autonomous, separate creature does, and you turn it for a good purpose. I don't have to cause the molester to molest through a divine decree in order to accomplish my purpose. God's big enough to accomplish his purpose despite, and sometimes when he chooses to, through the evil purposes of creatures. That is a correct theodicy. That is a biblical theodicy, and it doesn't undermine the holiness and the goodness and the character of God, which is what we're striving to do with our particular worldview.